Hi guys, my name is Millie. I currently am a fourth year at Western, class of 2018. I just matched into Loma Linda's interventional radiology program. I wanted to make this video available as an extra resource, so hopefully it's helpful and good luck with everything.
In this section, I'll be talking about ERAS and the residency application process. Regardless if you're applying AOA or ACGME, hopefully I can provide with some helpful tips and a general overview. Before I jump into info on ERAS, I'd like to share my story so that you know where my thoughts on ERAS are coming from. As an MS1, I attended a local IR conference, which sparked my interest in IR. That following summer, I got involved in research projects and shadowed. And since I was thinking about going to IR, I set up an elective rotation at the beginning of third year. And through this rotation, I knew that IR was a top specialty choice, but I still wanted to go through the rest of third year, open to other specialties. Throughout this journey, I had multiple people tell me to be realistic, that it would basically be impossible as a DO and female to get into IR. And naturally, I myself had multiple moments of doubt. But in the end, I didn't want to have any regrets. I didn't want to have any thoughts of, well, what if I tried applying to IR? So going into the application process, I knew that IR was one of the most competitive specialties in 2017, so I wanted to further set myself up to be a competitive applicant. I set up 4 away rotations during fourth year and maximized my interview opportunities. And in retrospect, my X factor was actually going to these IR conferences because that's where I met my mentors. So, what do residencies look for? I hated this answer as a third year, but it's the overall package. I'll be going through each of these areas in no particular order of importance. So, first off, with boards, yes, they are important, and do not let this be an oversight. They are the gatekeepers of whether or not you will receive an interview, as many programs use board scores as a cutoff. I was once advised to aim for 10 points above the average step score for your intended specialty, but of course, not all of us are superstars with 260s and 270s. I mean, certainly not I. Comlex, do the best that you can, but to be honest, they're pretty much useless unless you're going into a program that is AOA, because most ACGME programs do not know how to interpret the Comlex score, and to be frank, neither do I. The PE also matters. Pass it and send your score in. Next, your MSPE. This is a compilation of your grades and comments from third year. Grades on each rotation are subjective and variable. Of course, you want to do well on your rotations, but one of your evaluators might not click well with you and, give you a lower score. To be honest, don't sweat it too much. PDs know this evaluation process is subjective, and that's why there's so much emphasis on boards and to a lesser extent shelves, the objective data. Yes, your medical knowledge on rotations is important, but so is your personality and attitude. And for those of you who don't know exactly what you're going into, the best recommendation I had at the beginning of third year was to go through each rotation as if this was going to be your future specialty. And that way you could really tell, am I really actually interested in this specialty or meh, not so much. Throughout third year, I erred on the side of asking for more letters of recs than needed. I got the advice to ask for 1 on each rotation, but honestly, I think that's slightly overkill. I got 1 from IM, OB, Gen Surge, PEDS, and 4 in IRDR. But with that said, I also needed to apply for multiple programs, including prelim programs. So I made sure I had extra because I didn't know which ones were going to be generic letters and which letter writers would actually flake. And trust me, I witnessed that stress firsthand, where a fourth year was counting on his letter from a certain attending, but the letter writer did not pull through. The minimum I think you need to have is 2 in your intended specialty and 2 from a related field. And it would be preferable if you can get letters from program directors of your intended specialty, which you can get while you're on AWAYS as fourth year. It's also important to get strong letters from someone who knows you well, even if they aren't a PD or a chairman. So when I asked for letters, I preferred to do so in person and in private. Usually this happened after asking for my evaluation or if I just caught the attending at a good time. I would have my CV and my personal statement ready, which, yes, basically means that most of my letters came at the end of third year or beginning of fourth year. If you develop a good relationship with an attending or a resident early on in third year, that's totally fine. Just ask them if it's okay for you to email them for a letter at the end of third year. And make sure that you somehow keep in touch with them so that they won't forget who you are. And lastly, give your writers time to write. I'd be more cautious of those who have a quick turnover, since that's likely to be a more generic letter of rec. Ideally, I recommend having one larger ongoing research project that you're helping out with over a couple years, but I know that can be difficult with Western's limited resources. Otherwise, poster abstracts count under ERAS's publication section, and I started doing this as a third year. And if you still have submitted abstracts, you can put it down on your ERAS app, but with the disclaimer that it's still pending review. Research is weighted more heavily if you're intending to go into an academic residency program, so plan accordingly. There's a section for volunteer experiences. This is where I listed opportunities from college and as a first and second year med student that I helped out with. There's another section for work experience, another one for research experience, and that's where I listed projects that didn't result in publication. There's another section for hobbies and interests, and do not underestimate the section because some of your interviewers might use this as their go-to method to avoid awkward silences. And there's also another section for awards and one for membership in societies. I really encourage you to be a member of the National Association of whatever your intended specialty is. Oftentimes it's free or a low rate to join as a med student. So picking your OAs can be a little tricky. You might have specific institutions already in mind or a certain location that you're trying to target. But the tricky part about setting your away rotation schedule is having to do so through VSAS or VSLO. So I use the shotgun approach. I sent out maybe about 4 to 5 applications for a certain time frame because every institution rotates on different dates, and I personally wanted to stack up my rotations so that I didn't have to utilize, say, like a week of vacation in between different rotations. So I basically then just simply accepted the program that got back to me the earliest. And trust me, programs sometimes won't even get back to you on VSLO and simply leave you hanging. So I wouldn't count on getting a specific rotation through this portal. You also don't want to be wasting your time on these away rotations in the sense that, yes, most programs do provide a courtesy interview, but not all. The top tier institutions really have no obligation to provide you an interview. So I tried to pick programs that were DO friendly, and I basically looked at their online resident roster to see if they've accepted at least one DO. So I ended up doing 4 away rotations over the months of June through October. Try to avoid later aways as you'll be going on interviews. It would be pointless to set up an away and end up missing half of your time there, as the point of these aways is for FaceTime. This is where you can let your personality and your attitude shine. Be interested, be dedicated, be a good team player, and do not be annoying. If your field is procedural, try to get involved as an assist, but also be sure not to step on residents' toes. I would be cautious about doing any more than 4 aways as it gets pretty exhausting, and depending on where you set up your aways, you'll also have to think about the cost for housing and for transportation. So ERAS opens up in June and rolling submission starts in September. Do not delay your submission for any reason. If you're missing a letter of rec, you can still upload it later. I started drafting my personal statement around May, and I went through multiple edits. I had various individuals, residents and attendings, and non-medical individuals look at it for me. And some of you might need different versions. I had 2 separate personal statements, one for IR, one for DR, and then for my prelim programs, I changed up a paragraph here and there. Make sure you go get a professional headshot. You want to appear well put together because for the majority of this application process, that photo is the only thing that the programs will see. And at the end, check and recheck to make sure you've submitted everything. Programs cannot rank you if your application is incomplete. So picking which programs to apply to can be a challenge also. Some of you might be bound by location, others of you might want to focus on a program that's more academic or community oriented, others of you might want to see which ones are DO friendly. Overall, I aim to have a third that were above my reach, a third that were within my reach, and a third that were safety. For programs like ophtho, anesthesia, radiology, and derm, the setup of intern year is slightly different. Programs that are categorical means that intern year is included. Meanwhile, programs that are advanced means that you'll have to find your own intern PGY 1 year. Prelim programs that qualify include transitional, prelim med, prelim surgery. Usually, transitional years are considered the most cush and thus the most competitive. It's basically a glorified 5th year in med school, with a few months of wards and various electives available. Meanwhile, medicine is typically heavier on wards and surgical prelim is the roughest on schedule. Your prelim rank list can also be different for each advanced program. For example, if I have an advanced radiology program in New York, I can rank a prelim program in New York as first. And for my next rank, if I have an advanced radiology program in Florida, I can rank a prelim program in Florida as first. Or you can also rank a prelim program in LA so you won't have to move after med school. So for interviews, the golden number to have is 12. It's the average number of interviews that matched applicants attended. Once again, aim to have a third that are above your reach, a third that are within your reach, and a third that are safety. The best piece of advice that I got was to set up a separate email account just for ERAS. Because once you start getting your interview invites, you'll be checking your email constantly. Once your phone buzzes, you'll be disappointed to realize it's just junk mail. So I set up a separate vibration and ringtone for that email. That way, I knew it was ERAS related and I could check it ASAP. Interviews started coming out towards the end of September, so I would suggest being on a rotation that allows you to have internet access. This can be challenging if you're doing it away, especially if you're doing a surgical specialty where you might be scrubbed in. I try to get around that by having family or a friend check up on my emails, though it can be kind of tough trying to get them to be as obsessive as you are in booking the interviews. And it is key to book your interview ASAP as they are first come, first serve, and usually they put out more offers than interview slots available. So I set up my own Word doc to keep my rotation and interview schedule organized. It'll help you not to double book, and you'll likely have to account for travel time between interview dates. And hopefully, you'll be able to plan interviews based on region to make traveling more efficient. And try to avoid the Northeast and Midwest during the winter season the best that you can. I was advised to get a travel card. It came with perks such as TSA PreCheck, which saved me quite a few times, and the occasional access lounge also made trips more enjoyable. For me, I tried to maximize my interview trips and booked a few extra days at each destination. Since radiology is typically a 5-year long program, I wanted to make sure that I could see myself at least tolerating the area. And lastly, I had conducted mock interviews, which I felt was super helpful. I recommend setting up a mock through OTRS with Mike Guletti. If your schedule allows it, I highly recommend visiting the interview site the day before. Pre-interview dinners were great. This was usually the best way to get the honest opinions out of the residents regarding their program. Be sure to be early on your actual interview day. And ladies, be comfortable. They'll be taking you on tours, so pick the heels that you can walk in. And I can't speak for the guys, but I also kept a few items in my purse, including mint, floss, a lint roller, pen, and water. Be ready to have around 3 questions available for your interviewers. But if you really don't have any questions, it's also okay to say at the end that, hey, your residents and faculty have been great and have answered all of my questions. And after my interviews, I kept a Word doc for my notes for each program, especially since programs start to blur later on. I made sure to send out thank you emails to interviewers and also the residents who spent time sharing about the program with me. And be sure to be on your best behavior. Yes, the whole time and with anyone, including the residents. And lastly, have fun with the other applicants, as they will be your future colleagues. After you're done with all of your interviews, around 2 to 3 weeks before rank list is due, you can send a letter of intent. I simply use the same email thread as my post-interview thank you email. Make sure you tell only one program they are number one. It's quite possible for program directors to talk, and if programs end up ranking you high but you don't match with them, then they know that you lied. And trust me, that's not a good way to start off your career, especially since the network can be small. I told my other top 3 programs that they were ranked high and that I'd be honored to match there. Lastly, I also had an attending call the program director of my number 1 rank. A quick word regarding specialties with procedures. In general, academic programs have a stronger culture of hierarchy. The seniors will spend most of their time in the OR and have first pick on procedures. Meanwhile, in community programs, you'll likely get to be in on more cases early on in training. Another aspect to ask about is the diversity of cases. Community programs might get a lot of bread and butter, but less complex cases. You'll have to determine what you're looking for in your career to be able to decide that. You can also ask residents whether they spend more of their time as primary operators or as assists, or you can ask to see their case log.
The best individuals to ask for advice will likely be those who are 1 year above you, as the process is still fresh in their minds. But feel free to contact me if you would like. Good luck with everything.